Here we go, we're going to open up this MusicXML export from LaRue. It's this tune called Stable Genus. I misunderstood and thought he said Stable Genius. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm adding in the title, and I'm copying the layout and format from a different chart where I already have all the framing correct. Now I'm adjusting the fonts, so that way it kind of has my sort of take on things. So now what I'm doing is I'm going in and loading in my staff styles and chords and all of those kinds of settings and articulation stuff. So now what I'm doing is I'm going through and removing all the chords that are not actually in the document, all the symbols. And then I'm actually going to replace all of the chord symbols with either versions that I'm creating now or ones that already exist in my library. That way they have my formatting touches that I like and all the fonts. Once I finish this, I'm actually going to be going through and adjusting each of the chords individually, removing bass notes from chords and actually creating a separate chord symbol for bass notes, and then aligning the two. That way the alignment point for both chords is actually what I intend and not maybe just a little bit off. That way I can make sure I get a good performance from my musicians each time. So what I found, the only way to really do that effectively is to do it manually. You can see me creating all these different bass notes. You can see me dragging chords closer to the staff. I think that's a useful thing to make sure that it gets kind of seen. It doesn't matter necessarily that the chords are perfectly in line, but what does matter is that the chords are in eye line based on where the melody and the notes are. You can see some of this MusicXML stuff doesn't get formatted very well in Finale the first time. I think it's important to take this time because you spend all this time working on the chart, and then if it doesn't get played well and it comes down to you not spending the time copying it properly, I mean, really, it's kind of ridiculous. Now I'm adjusting the part name. I'm going to also remove the tenor saxophone thing on the left-hand side of the margin, and I'm also going to transpose it. Now I'm going through and checking all the end harmonics. Now I'm going through in my head and reading through this chart. A good rule of thumb is you want to avoid augmented and diminished intervals. Now sometimes you really can't avoid that, and you just have to figure out what would be sight readable. So some of this stuff is what I'm trying to fix. With that measure, I thought that it was being modified in terms of note spacing based on the chord, so now I'm using the plugin JW Note Spacing to actually try and adjust that. Now I'm adding in all of the different text fields that I typically like, which is the composer, copyright field, and everything. And as you can see at the time, I thought this was written as a topical piece based on the meme that just came out about Donald Trump saying, stable genius. I got this tune the day after that meme came out, so I thought that's what it was. Turns out it was Stable Genus, and the tune's been around for a while, and you'll see me adjust this in the revisions. I really like my formatting to be kind of even and spaced evenly, but it's hard to space it evenly and not use an entire page. So one trick I found is actually expanding the number of staffs you have in order to space it evenly, and then reducing the number of staffs you have. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm using the JW Note Spacing tool, which I use all the time, and formatting it the way I like, and now I'm saving it to a PDF. Alright, so now at this point, I've actually gone through and had a rehearsal of this, and now it's time for me to make some revisions. Big thing was I noticed Sibelius didn't export transposed chords. So now I'm going through each of the chords after I transpose them using the Utilities Change Chords tool, and I'm adjusting their positioning, and I'm adjusting the way they're spelled. The big thing you want to make sure is if you have your chord simplification on under your chord menu, that might drive you a little bit nuts. Now I'm adding in little details like what the form is for myself. Big trick here is you really want to make things concise. So I'm going to be playing with this language here, trying to make it fewer words but also more descriptive. So now what you see me doing here is I'm actually trying to figure out where the coda sign is. So I'm basically holding down all the modifier keys and hitting every key on my keyboard. And I found it. It's Alt-Shift-B. So now I'm going to put it in a rectangle, and you're going to see that I'm going to assign it, and it's going to look a little bit too small. So now we're going to adjust the size up. I'm going to adjust the form a little bit here too. So that way, I'll play it correctly. I just added an extra measure by right-clicking and clicking Add Measures, because there's a vamp at the end that's very similar. I use the filters feature constantly. Oftentimes, it's almost always set to just what the chords are. However, I use notes a lot as well. Now I'm creating this little circle thing, which is like a decrescendo till nothing. That's kind of a Jim McNeely thing. So now I'm writing something for myself. LaRue kind of wanted me to play this bend up into this high altissimo G on saxophone, and wanted it kind of ugly. So I'm going to bend into it. I'm using the slide tool, do that, and then you can see me adding that F natural in there. Really should have been an E sharp for sight reading purposes. And you can see there's where I fixed the title. And I realized that it wasn't necessarily written this here. Now I'm just adjusting a couple more chord layouts. And now I'm saving the document. That's it.